to a live stream. We're here, and we are doing it. Yeah, man. Certainly been a crazy, crazy week. And it seems like it's not getting any less crazy. I'm going to keep it real. This has been something else, but you guys know we're going to give people some time to trickle in. Thanks for joining us. Again, we're going to try to take a look at update what there is to be updated. Try to learn something about what's been going on in Kursk. Try to get a sense of where things are happening, what's happening, you know? And we're going to try to ask ourselves some other things like, what is the objective here? Anyway, thanks for becoming a member, Victor Robinson. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to let people kind of filter in. But you guys know the rules, right? If you want to have a burning question that you absolutely want answered, you can always throw up a super chat. Yeah, so let's see. I'm just looking through some different perspectives here. I'm going to try to yeah, we're just going to pull up. I'm sorry. I'm going through some tweets because basically what happened is that under the hashtag Kursk, Russia has really ruined your ability to look at anything on X. And the reason is because like spam accounts are actually showing screenshots of adult content. Not that it's not explicit, right? Because X would suppress that, but it's like screenshots of it, you know, like I don't know how else to tell you. It's obvious, right? And it means that, you know, like a live stream, I can't scroll through it. Matthew McLean, thank you for the 10. It says, can't wait to get a more in-depth opinion on everything that's been happening this week. Yeah. Yeah, it's like been really just a crazy week. And yeah, you know, I think, well, we're going to let people get in, and then I'm going to share like kind of my overall feeling on it about what's been going on. Dark George says, Walt's Veep. You're right. Has it been? No, he's been announced as a Veep for more than a week, right? But we could talk about his military service. In fact, yeah, definitely. If you want me to discuss that, I sure can. Links, USSR collapsed partially due to loss in Afghanistan when the boys didn't come home, people revolted. Do you think this will also impact the war ending? Do you think Putin has this fear? Links, yes, absolutely. I think definitely that is a huge fear of Putin's. I think it's one of the reasons to answer Matthew's questions. I think it's actually one of the drivers of why Ukraine chose to take the fight to Russian territory. And on one hand, they're like, because doing so means that they're going to be fighting Russian conscripts. And Russian conscripts, it's been very important to Putin to make sure that his conscripts, right, soldiers drawn from the general public, not contract volunteers, not foreign nationals kind of coerced, but true Russian citizens. Up until this point, they have not fought in Ukraine, right? They've had to sign a contract first and extend their service. Now they are in the line of fire, and Ukraine is taking them as POWs. They're not kidnapping them. That's important. They're POWs. They're combatants in a conflict. Ukraine's taking them as POWs to exchange for their own personnel. Many of them are now KIA when they had no desire to fight at all. A lot of them probably didn't even have a desire to serve, honestly. They just simply were the people who weren't able to get a doctor, someone to sign off to get them out of service. And so I think by forcing the Russian public to even more directly confront the price of this conflict, by forcing the Russian public to actually have their conscripts go into this fight, is a objective of Ukraine's to ramp up the pressure on Putin, because now every single mother who, remember, there's almost, I think it's like what, 300,000 or 400,000 conscripts enter the Russian training pipeline every 6 months. So you're talking about like 1 million Russian mothers a year. Even if only a small fraction of those fight in Kursk, every one of those mothers is going to worry about their son and their son's well-being. James Kelly, it seems like Western equipment is good to go in Kursk. I don't know if there's like a border limit or if there's something, I'm not really sure. But clearly, no Western country that I've seen has come out and said, we condemn this. This isn't the use of our equipment that we authorized. And so I think it's a case sort of like the strikes in Belgorod, out north of Kharkiv, where policy changed and it wasn't announced, right? Like the Ukrainians got told, hey, U.S. says you're good to go, but there was no like press release, you know, again, and nor should there have been, right? Because this operation, one of the reasons it's as successful as it has been total surprise. Russia sounds like they were caught completely flat-footed. And so, yeah, okay, a lot of people in the chat also talking about strike gum. And so here's what I wanted to do. For today, one, if you don't know what strike gum is, if you've been living under a rock, say hi to the bugs. But when I was in Afghanistan, to get the caffeine on these long 12, sometimes I would do 24, 36-hour patrols. It was exhausting. And to get caffeine, the only source we had was this stuff called Rippets. And it was a government-issued energy drink. And guys, it was disgusting. It was the grossest thing I literally ever had. And thanks, Solar Solid. Clarifying, America has allowed Ukraine to use the weapons at Kursk, identifying it as self-defense. That's probably correct. Seba, thank you for the 5. He says, this is a we'll give your land back if you give our land back. I think that's actually the best summary I've heard. Literally, that's the answer to Matthew's question, really, about like why. That to me is the best summary of why, right? Because it is just like they're capturing the POWs, the Russian POWs, as many as they can, because the Ukrainians are going to go and they know they're going to get their people back for every one of them. And they're doing the same thing with the land. They say, listen, if we hold Russian land, that's the best leverage to get our land back. Andrew Corey, thanks for the 5. He says, what if Putin sends his greatest weapon, Steven Seagal? God help us all. God help us all, man. Steven Seagal. He taught Anderson Silva that front kick. Truly, truly a legend. Yeah, so everybody in chat's like, hey, Rippets. Yeah, those of you that know Rippets, Rippets are terrible. Rippets are so gross. And if you've drank them when you're on a patrol in eastern Afghanistan, when it's like 112 out, it's absolutely just, it's like traumatizing, right? It is, you know, I mean, I'm joking. It's not as traumatizing as, I don't know, actual hitting a VBIED, but it's not great. From the outside looking in, thanks for the $14. I appreciate it. Love all you do. Keep up the great work. Yeah, so anyway, I had that experience, and I said, listen, I'm going to figure out a better way to get people their caffeine, right? And so I basically was like, how do I take an energy drink's worth of caffeine and put it in a single piece of gum? And I worked with these guys in Denver called Liquid Core. They're a manufacturer there. They're really small, but they helped me create Strike Gum. Custom formulation, doesn't exist anywhere else. Zero sugar, mint flavor, 90 milligrams of caffeine in every piece, plus 100 milligrams of alpha GPC, which enhances cognitive clarity. So this is the equivalent of 5 energy drinks, right? And so if you guys want some Strike Gum, you could pick it up at strikegum.com. And, you know, we rolled out, I'm going to say 2 months ago maybe, the 5-pack. And the 5-pack, I think, is far and away the best deal. Because, again, you throw 1 pack in your office, keep 1 at home, throw 1 in the gym bag, and wherever you need an energy drink, you already got 1. You don't have to go to the gas station and drop $5. And honestly, if you guys order on Strike Gum and get the 5-pack during the live stream, I'll give you guys a shout out. Just your first name. You know. But, you know, if you're thinking about it, you know, get the shout out, get the love. Listen, you know, here's the thing. Here's what I appreciate about people are like, oh, you're making commercials. I'm like, listen, dudes. Here's the thing. I know it's good. That's the easiest thing. This is Strike Gum. It's really not meth, right? You see in the chat, everybody that's tried it is like, yeah, it actually is good, and it does what it says, right? Okay. People are like, I don't want energy drink. I want war. War. Like, more war. I've had my energy drink. I've had my Strike Gum. All right. So let's talk about it. Let's get into these updates, my guys. Okay. Taking a look at the live map. A couple of interesting little doodads, little pieces of data here. One, again, I think Live UA is pretty conservative, but I do want to point out that they seem to have included a Ukrainian incursion all the way down here, which is new, right? A very interesting confirmation. And I think you also, again, as we talked about in some earlier content, there was talk about Ukrainian troops pushing into Tatkino. There was talk about them pushing into this Gaevo. And so some of this appears to have succeeded. There's also a lot of talk that they actually have taken Sudzha. And so I think this is the most conservative. And one of the reasons is because Ukrainian forces really are trying their best not to reveal who exactly is where. And we're going to make our best estimates, but you could see here that they're not confirming basically any information about Ukrainian troop movements, where combat is happening. Now, there's some things that have been released and have been publicly acknowledged. Again, you could see AFP shows the Ukrainian military crossing the border near Sumy. AFP, I think, is an official press account of the Ukrainian government, right? So you're seeing them move towards Sumy, which is noteworthy because it is not Sudzha, right? And again, it may be part of this campaign to annex a large stream of Russian turf, right? Or a large string, I guess is the better way to put it, right? To annex just as much Russian territory as possible. Not unlike Russia's strategy, where again they're taking terrain of little value, but they simply want to take it probably to negotiate it away, you know, which seems kind of crazy, but it's actually a little bit crazy like a fox, right? They want to, the more they have to give away, the better the odds they're going to keep what they want. Also, quick shout out, Alan, Mike, Will, Austin, I got you guys. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming out here. Picking up the Strike Gum, getting your 5-pack, you know. Like I said, if you're gonna anyway, get the love. Right? Love is the real benefit. Claudio asked, "Can I lose weight with Strike Gum?" Okay, so for legal purposes, that is a claim that I cannot make, right? Because that's a medical claim. In my experience, caffeine definitely helps suppress my appetite. And it has no sugar, zero, I think it's like 5 calories a piece. So in that sense, I think if you're trying to, it certainly won't hurt. But again, I cannot make the claim that the FDA has only approved GLP-1s for weight loss. I think they've approved some other things. Craig Johnson, thank you. Imagine if Ukraine ends up with more terrain. Dude, that would be absolutely wild. Save 50% or more. Says, we need to make sure Russia doesn't get their hands on strike gun and be a game changer for them. Listen, I don't know what else to tell you. Those Russian conscripts, energy only helps if you do something good with it, right? So, like, the conscripts will just run across open fields, like, faster, right? Which I guess could help them, I guess. But I feel like it would just be, die in a field in Donetsk, speed run any percent, right? Dark George, huge thank you for the 50, bro. Okay, I'm a little confused about the Kursk offensive. It seems like a great opportunity to roll up Russian force along the border, but Ukraine seems to be pushing deep rather than wide. I assume there's a plan, but I certainly don't understand it. Okay, so I think the reason they're pushing deep is because I suspect that they want to. I actually think their primary target is indeed the nuclear power plant near Kurchatov. And the reason I think that is because, one, okay, so terrain for the sake of terrain, definitely good. But what's better is valuable terrain. And if you can get valuable turf, particularly things of extremely high value like Kurchatov, you also have this situation where you can leverage that, right? You could sit there and go, hey, we want everything back in exchange for your nuclear power plant. Plus, remember, Russia controls two key Ukrainian power plants. I think. Do they still control Chernobyl? Did that get rolled back? Actually, they might have rolled back Chernobyl. But they still control Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And so I think Ukraine is saying, listen, we'd rather get this piece of turf. They're also trying to go deep because Russia has fortified their border somewhat. And so Ukraine's goal would be to get behind those Russian forces, right? Can you imagine if you're a conscript on the border? Let's say you're in Veselioya or whatever this is, right? And suddenly Ukrainian troops drive up this road here from Tetkino and they link up. They go deep. But now all these Russians are cut off. And that is the idea, as to try to cut these guys off. Sir Thinkslot says, hi, thanks. That's what I think they're going for. That's why I think they're going deep, because the deeper they go, the more they can cut off, right? Remember, somewhere like, look at, for example, the Russian column in Rylisk, which had to pass through there in order to reinforce any of this. So if they could hold Rylisk, they would effectively be able to take a lot more terrain. So that's the idea of like deep. I think they're going to go deep and then go wide. Okay. Jonathan Scott, do they have any insight on how sustainment is happening? Are they scavenging fuel to keep pushing? Do they have logistics trains running the whole way? I've heard reports, actually, and seen some footage that they are having logistics trains just follow along. Follow right along. Okay, sorry. So, let's see. Thanks a lot. I wish they would move from Bila Bereza towards Kostrova. Okay, let's see if I can find where you're talking about from Bila Bereza towards Kostrova. I'm not sure, actually. Let me see if I can look this up here. Kostrova. Nothing. Okay, Bila, I don't know. No, that's not in here either. I'm sorry. I can't find either of those locations when I search for them. How much of Kursk does Ukraine need in order to bargain? The answer is, even with all of Kursk, it would still be a tough bargaining chip. Because you could see Kursk is a large oblast if they had the whole thing. but it would be very embarrassing. I think it's pretty. Kursk is a pretty valuable oblast to Russia, right? Economically, right? Generally, the more south and east you go broadly, the more densely populated, the more economically valuable. Again, you look at some of these like these big empty oblasts, they don't really have a lot of economic value and activity, but Kursk definitely would. So even if they had all of Kursk, they might be able to bargain back like a lot of their turf here on the east. It's tough to say. Crimea, maybe, right? But the answer is maximalist. The more is better, full stop. Okay, wait. Sorry, there's something going on here with. Okay, I think I've caught up with everybody. Okay, somebody's saying that ISW is showing a lot more. Also, shout out to Donald Frasset, picking up the strike gum. Yeah, so, okay, people have been asking me. All right, so thanks a lot says check Google Earth. Will in a sec. Okay, Claude Hopper says apparently Russia burning the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Let's try to dig into this story. I think this is really interesting. Okay, Dean London, chewing caffeine gum in the UK, but it's not nice. I'd love to try some strike gum. Well, supply within Europe. You can order on strikegum.com. You can order and we'll ship to Europe, to the UK. Again, shipping's expensive, so like it may just end up being worth it to do like the tray, the 15 pack, just for efficiency's sake. Okay, Matthew McLean, do you think they want to grab Kursk power plant even more to say don't mess with the Zaporizhzhia after the fire that happened today? All right, let's talk about the fire. Okay. All right, here's Politico. Politico's usually pretty good. All right, Russia sets fire nuclear power plant, says Zelensky. Zelensky saying today that Russia has started a fire on the grounds of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Right. He says currently radiation levels are within norm, so it doesn't look like it happened. As long as Russian terrorists may take control of the power plant, the situation is and cannot be normal. Right, and he says since the first day of its seizure, Russia's been using the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant to blackmail Ukraine, all of Europe, and the world. It's not clear that Russia has actually done this. That's a little bit of a stretch. I haven't heard anything. I have seen some photos that Russia militarized it and brought military forces on to bear on Zaporizhzhia, but they haven't necessarily, like, if they were to actually hold it hostage, they would say, if Ukraine doesn't capitulate in X days, we are going to blow up the power plant. We're going to release radioactive material. We'll destroy the cooling systems. So I think that sort of thing is what we're probably looking at, or rather what Zelensky's trying to imply here. And that the reality is that it may be sort of passively that message, but it's not the same thing as actually holding it hostage, right? Right. Obviously, Russia. Yeah, Russia attacked. Russia, obviously sees the city, or the power plant. Again, I'm not seeing any like significant confirmation that this fire is anything other than a plume of smoke coming out of one of the towers on the plant's territory. Again, this may be a provocation or attempt to create panic. That's what I think it is. Right. Again, there's unofficial information that Russian forces set fire to a large number of automobile tires in the cooling towers. So that to me says this is a threat. This is meant to, cause panic. I think causing panic is exactly what they're going for. Because it's tough. You have to bring in a lot of tires. You have to light them on fire. You have to have them come out of the nuclear power plant. The goal is to like scare people. Yeah, I would believe that. Okay, so Thanks a Lot says Popovka and Rylisk. Okay. All right, that we could probably try to find. All right, so he's saying Rylisk is up here, and then Popova. Let's see. I'm trying to see. Let's see if this will let me. Zaporizhzhia, Luhansk Oblast. Well, it's probably not that. Again, okay. All right. I can't. I'm having a hard time still. So people are like, yeah, so terrorism. Yeah, kind of. All right, they're like southeast of Rylisk, along the border northwest. Okay, so you're saying why? So what? Like along the border northwest, north. Okay, so like northwest of Rylisk. So I think if they chose not to take these kind of directions here, it probably has to do with terrain. I actually wonder that if this is not like like terrain that doesn't favor maneuver warfare. You could see some of this dense urban and forested area. That's where Russia tends to do the best. And you kind of notice here, there's actually not that much forested area. There's a little bit of these little pockets, but not much. And that I think is intentional, right? You know, our mechanized forces operate best in this war. You know, mechanized forces operate best in this war in open terrain, and so they probably selected terrain that was very open and had a lot of different roads that they could maneuver in. Okay, Jason Cavender says, I think this offensive is more political strategy than terrain. The incursion bring conscripts into the fighting, broadening the cost of war to include conscripts' families, not just volunteers. Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. We actually talked about that earlier on the stream. Yeah, applying the political pressure. Also, we talked about the fact that this is also applying like it's giving Ukraine more diplomatic chips that it can exchange for its own terrain. So I think it's both about increasing the political pressure on Putin. It's about humiliating the Russian military. Again, the powerful Russian military that's eating up 8% of Russia's GDP and crowding out a lot of other activity and driving a lot of inflation, still can't secure Russian terrain, Russian turf. So I think all of those things are part of the strategy, right? Any good strategic shift like this, and this is what this is going to have a political element to it, right? Thanks, Spasmatic, for joining. John McGuire, recent subscriber, enjoy the content perspective. You may have covered before. Do you have any suggestions for real-time coverage, providing random Telegram stuff? I don't. This is one of the things, both sides, but Russia especially, loves to kind of throw wrenches into real-time coverage. It's also hard because in the case of this type of operation, OPSEC is really important. And so you're seeing less and less content coming out of Ukrainian elements, right? A lot of them, I think, are released very deliberately and kind of on a delay. So I think you're seeing, I think the coverage is tough. This has been the hardest phase of the war to cover since probably the beginning. But again, maintaining this sort of, I don't want to say maintaining this fog of war is essential to making maneuver operations really work. Okay, I want support strike gum delivery to Portugal, but it's equal to the price of a gym. Totally understand. The shipping to Europe is hard. We're trying to figure out how to solve that problem. Get a European distributor, something, but it's tough, man. The EU is tough. Regulations are hard, so we'd have to like change all our packaging to comply with EU regs if we wanted to sell like commercially in Europe, like in mass. So, you know, it's a tough cookie. But the nice thing with Portugal, particularly, is that our manufacturer's second location is in Portugal. So if we were to expand into the EU, Portugal would probably be like ground zero for us. But again, for us, our priority is absolutely just it's the U.S. market. Also, shout out to Greg picking up some strike gum. You guys know we talked about it earlier, but I know we had a bunch of people join in. If you pick up the strike gum 5-pack, on strike gum, I'll give you the shout out, right? Just your first name. Don't worry, I'm not gonna be out there doxing your address. Thanks, John Smith at 123 Fake Street. But if you're gonna pick some up anyway, get the love, feel the love. Okay. Metal Gamer says, for the capture trades open fields, would this make a great defense in depth area to clap more Russian armor and meet wave assaults? No, because again, this is terrain that Ukraine really wants to hold for bargaining purposes. Right? And they've already been doing this. This terrain is so much more open, and Russia continues to drive here, and Ukraine continues to kill them. And it's funny because we know now, because Ukraine was funneling brigades and ammunition and materials and supplies to this offensive effort, we know that they were just literally letting the Russians go here, right? James Lynn came in late. How close is UAF to Kursk Central City? The answer is nobody really knows, because Ukraine is being so tight with OPSEC. And because Russia is spamming basically a bunch of fake links, spam links, actual porn links all over X, we can't get we can't get good information from X. It's very hard to know the reality. Is the incursion to Kursk why the new defense secretary of Russia called Lloyd Austin a few weeks ago? Maybe. I never really put that together. I didn't really put that together, but that's absolutely a credible theory. Very credible. Very interesting theory, man. Dark George, it's highly possible to drive wedge between the Belarusian population and Putin. Essentially, it's possible for Belarus to no longer be a Russian vassal state. No, because Lukashenko isn't democratic. He's not democratically elected. And the fact is that Belarus has actually never looked more independent, right? Putin would love to get the Belarusian military into this fight, but he just can't. He just can't get them to do it, right? They keep doing these weird sort of trickle little crumbs, right? We'll let you station some guys here. Oh, you can use some of our old stocks for your people. Belarusian troops will train a brigade or two. The old Wagner guys can stay here when they're not in Africa, right? Little piddly things. But the Belarusian military is not in this fight, which is unusual, right? Heavy B, incursion is making Russia have to deploy about 10 brigades to their border for the remainder of the war, like Ukraine has had to do thus far. Good point, right? If nothing else, it'll force Russia to be really honest and to put them back on a level playing field. Of course, Russia has a large number of conscripts, but now that those conscripts could be in real combat, you're going to see a plummeting of the likelihood of conscripts actually showing up for service. Full-time RV living, $2. Thank you. Appreciate it. Respect. Okay, Lynx is saying, and I haven't vetted this at all, but he's saying that the new Russian defense minister reached out to a Putin assassination plan during the St. Petersburg parade. Okay, interesting. Russia would definitely be anxious about that sort of stuff after that major terror attack in Moscow. Okay, Grim asks, do you think an effective defense line is Russia digging in between the UAF and the nuclear power plant would be effective? It doesn't have a lot of time to be fortified. I think that's the million-dollar question for Russia right now. So Ukraine's strategy relies on them moving faster than Russia can build fortifications, right? They have to break through, penetrate deep, and always be ahead of Russian command's ability to build new fortifications and establish something that can actually hold off and contain the Ukrainian breakthrough. But it's hard because the further into Kursk Ukraine gets, the more stretched out their supply lines get, the more vulnerable they become. And the more interdiction that Russia does, taking out fuel trucks and ammo depots, and the slower that offensive is going to be, right? The less momentum's on their side. So that's kind of the game that you're stuck playing with here, is they want to push as hard as they can, but they need the logistics to not get thinned out. And it's hard. Logistics for like a meat assault are easy, right? What do those guys need? They need food, they need water, and they need small arms ammunition. But what does an Abrams need? Well, it needs spare parts. It needs 6 different kinds of rounds. It needs fuel, specialty fuel. And its crew need to eat. They got to use the bathroom. If they get hurt, they need to be treated or medevac. If the Abrams gets destroyed, it needs to be brought to the rear and repaired and then put back into the front line, or replaced with another tank crew. So it's really complicated to handle the logistics of this kind of stuff. So it's a tall order to conduct this kind of fighting. They call it the graduate level of warfare for a reason. TL Joe, if this doesn't change anything strategic to gain several hundred square miles for just 1,000 KIA, is it huge in ending the war? Yeah, remember, it is a really bad look for Putin to have Ukrainians control his territory, right? He has the war, any end now, as long as Ukraine can hold Kursk, any end of the war is going to have to involve Ukraine giving that territory back. It's too embarrassing. Can you imagine Russia signing away part of their territory? And so in order to do that, Ukraine knows this. So they're going to sit at the negotiating table and be like, oh, for every square mile of Kursk you want back, we want 10 of our territory, because you don't own it and you never claimed to own it, right? You said it was an independent Luhansk People's Republic or whatever bullshit, right? Okay, again, so that it is a strategic shift in the war if they can hold this territory. Elise, unsure if this helps you. Search Rylisk or blah, blah, blah. It's in Kursk. Yeah, I found Rylisk. I'm just, at this point, I'm not really sure what the question is. There's not, like, I'm sure Ukraine would love to be in Rylisk, right? I'm sure they would love to have got punched through there. But they have to, again, make the calls what they have. Every time they make a new front opening up, remember, they got to solve the logistics for that whole new front. And that means pulling logistics out of their existing fronts, right? So they have to find this trade-off between having a spear and having a hammer, right? Because different ones, they both need the same logistics. And so you want to have, it's like an axe, right? You want your axe, an axe that's all blade is a knife, and you're not going to chop down a tree with it, right? But an axe that is all weight and no blade is a hammer, and you won't chop down a tree with that either. So you've got to find a way to blend it together, right? Okay, so one of the things I thought was interesting. Oh, okay. So Thanks a Lot is out here giving me like coordinates. So are you saying that you're like, oh, they should push into Rylisk from here? Like from up here? Again, these are, look at the roadways. There is none, right? There's almost no substantive roads, and they would have to fight through a bunch of forest, right? This is where light infantry, where their Ukrainian advance in armor, it just isn't there, right? You'd have to get access to some of these roadways, maybe in here. But again, here you're going to have to fight in an urban area, right? So these thin, like these small, narrow roadways, it's called canalizing. It's where you take a large force and you force it onto a very narrow road or a very narrow space, and it makes you very vulnerable. And I think the reason they chose this spot, one of them, is that it's actually pretty well developed, right? There's a reason that it's also, right? It also kind of corresponds. It was one of the routes that Russia entered Ukraine, right? We can zoom out here. I'll show you guys. See, this still plots all the areas in Sumy where Russian forces pushed into Ukraine. And you can see it's the exact route they took. The reason is there's big, robust highways. There's lots of, it's very maneuver friendly. Best and worst outcome of the offensive. That's easy. Best outcome, realistic. We're gonna make it realistic. Best outcome would probably be the seizure of the city of Kursk and the nuclear power plant. Those are two jewels that Putin absolutely non-negotiably has to get back from Ukraine in any peace deal. Not acceptable to have a peace deal that gives Ukraine control of a substantive Russian city and a nuclear power plant. So suddenly Ukraine goes, great. If you want it back, all you have to do is give us our country back. The end. The worst outcome of this offensive would be Ukraine getting pushed right out and losing, 10 brigades or whatever's in the fight now, or losing, a dozen brigades, and basically having squandered a large portion of this aid from the United States without a certainty that it's going to come back. So those are the best and worst outcomes. Andrew Borth, are there other historical examples of counter-invasion while there's another active front? The Inside Russia guy did some reaction to shocked Kursk civilians, and he was not very forgiving. My first thought would be something like Gallipoli. You had, the UK really was at the forefront of Gallipoli. They weren't invaded, but their ally France had been. The Turks were supporting the Germans. So if you clump the Axis and the Allies together, or were they the Axis at that time? The Allies and the tri whatever they were, tripartite. If you clump them together as two sides, then Gallipoli was a counter invasion. It failed pretty epically, but primarily because of I think because of generals being myopic. Other examples of if you invade me, I'll invade you right back. I'm trying to think. Technically you have stuff like, it's hard to know. It's like, sometimes that's a changing fortune of war. Again, like the Russians being defeated in Stalingrad and then pushed the Germans all the way into Germany. Again, yeah. So almost any time the aggressor gets defeated in war, you have that. But in this instance, yeah, I guess you'd argue World War II, right? Germany invades France, and then again the Allies invade Germany through North Africa, or try to get to Germany through North Africa, sort of, where Germany had some colonies. So that could also be a invading the invader. Cosplaying History Nerd, thank you. Love your content. Make it easy to understand, which allows me to pass the updates to friends and family. Yeah, that is my whole goal. Like, not to bury you guys in military terminology and stuff like that, right? To make you guys see the big picture and at least try to understand the calculus that different leaders are operating under, right? Sort of link the political and the tactical. If I do that and you feel like you understand it, then, man, I'm succeeding in my job. John Scott, are they near major rail lines or logistics hubs? I don't know where some of these logistics hubs are located in Kursk. But I suspect generally they're going to be in towns where a lot of roadways intersect. So again, Suha probably is one of them. Probably not anymore, but it was. You probably also have Koronivo. People talked about Rylisk being one. So that's where I would suspect. Anytime you see major highways intersection, because again, why reinvent the wheel, right? Major highways are going to link up in towns where civilians also need food, water, medical care. They also need like non-military gear, but those logistics hubs exist for a reason. So I think anywhere you see kind of big highways kind of intersect, that's a sign that it's a civilian logistics hub and would work probably as a military logistics hub. Shokanti says, thoughts on UA using Kursk to smuggle drones and saboteurs. Strongly suspect that drones and saboteurs are working real hard. And probably ranging far out, right? And they're probably working more as reconnaissance than saboteurs themselves. Because again, when you have HIMARS, when you have ATACMs, when you have these deep strike weapon systems, the constraint isn't can you hit the target? The constraint is can you find a target to hit? Is this strike considered similar to a blitzkrieg? Mark Washburn. Yeah, the blitzkrieg was seen as kind of the proto version of combined arms warfare and particularly mechanized or maneuver warfare, right? The idea that you moved so fast, you were moving faster than enemy command and control could understand the battlefield, and that conferred the advantage. And so in that sense, I think so, right? And it's why momentum works in your favor. You need more and more speed. Save 15% or more. Did you see Putin's face at the MOD meeting about the incursion? He's absolutely seething. Oh my God, I can only imagine. I didn't see his face, but he must be. The fact that someone like Putin, who can keep a straight, he could keep a game face. The fact that he is losing it is also just hilarious to me. Yeah. So, again, CPO invading Africa, the best counter invasion, the OG of Invade the Invader. Truly classic. Okay. Interesting. Someone was saying that, oh yeah, that's okay. Well, that's deep state. All right, there is one other map here from Twitter that seems fairly recently updated, where they're showing Ukrainian forces where they're continuing to make advances. They're still trying to take Sudza, according to this map. Russians trying to reinforce and not lose Sudza, and that Ukrainians are enjoying what looks like the most success out towards Koronivo. But again, you have this situation where you can see kind of here, it depicts a pretty limited advance by Ukraine. But then you look at the live UA map and you see a somewhat different story of, again, this like sort of, where they're driving closer to Kornico, but they're also have this whole control, this whole border region here. So it's just always interesting to see kind of nobody really knows with any great certainty what's happening. James Kelly asks, do we know if Russia pulls any troops from the front? Saw something about Russian 272 moving to reinforce, and it already got hit with drones. I have seen similar stuff. I think so. There's some units that have purportedly gotten pulled from Pokrovsk in order to reinforce Ukrainian positions. Are you working on strike gun for Amazon Canada from Ken Lane? Yeah, but it's not a huge priority. Our number one priority is to get on Prime for US. But again, you can order it to Canada from Strike Gum. The shipping shouldn't be that bad. StrikeGum.com. Dubious Intelligent Gengar, nice, says, now they're in Kursk because Ukrainian drones and stuff not provided by allies to strike strategic targets. Now they can reach them. I think the extra like 10 kilometers they've gotten are not going to substantially change what they can and can't reach. Like either they can or they can't. Also, huge thanks to Nick for picking up some Strike Gum. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. Again, I haven't eaten yet. But if you guys have any final questions, throw it up, right? I'm going to get out of here in probably like 10 minutes. So again, very interesting. There's also a rumor, I want to point this out, that a rumor that Putin's removed Gerasimov from command over this Kursk operation and called in the head of the FSB, Portnikov. And again, this is some guy. So, but I think it'd be interesting. Again, changing horses mid-battle can be very good. It can also be very bad. So it just depends. It just depends. Yeah, that's also actually something else that is worth talking about, is that Putin's really trying to downplay this because he designated it as a counter-terrorist operation. Very simple, something that the Russian public is probably very acclimated for, which can be again, a sign that he's trying to bury what's happening. Mark of reality is the Zaporizhzhia power plant on fire. Yes and no. I think it's a Russian. Yes, the Russians lit a real fire. No, it does not appear to be a threat. It appears to be a something to create panic, and it's Russia probably signaling to Ukraine that hey, we could do something to this power plant if we wanted to, because literally they're just burning a bunch of tires in it. MMD asks, what about the Australians' FA-18s? Can they get them? We've already sent them a bunch of F-16s. The FA-18s aren't going to do anything. They're still a non-stealth multi-role aircraft. I don't think they're going to do anything significantly that the F-16s can't do fundamentally. They might. I'm sure they have different capabilities, but not significantly. Mankato Potato asked, was 1812 a counter invasion? Not real. Well, yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. It was counter invasion. You're right. So we invaded British-controlled Canada, which at the time was Britain, and they invaded us right back. Okay, Russian Telegram. Okay, Yevgeny Romanchukevich. Russian Telegram saying command's giving Russian soldiers amphetamines for them to work around the clock. How true do you think this is? Totally believable. Absolutely believable. Something that a lot of militaries do. In fact, I think we even give our pilots like modafinil for long missions to maintain a high level of focus. William Raider says, what do you think about the controversy around Tim Waltz and his service? The criticism's justified. I'm actually, you know what? I think I'm going to make a separate video on that, because this is a live stream for that. But your question will be answered probably in like a video tomorrow. I'll talk about his service and JD Vance's and just kind of weigh in. All right. Anything else? Any last minute stuff, guys? Again, I'm gonna wrap this up here. Unless you guys have other questions. Also, if you want to get your 5-pack of Strike Gum, if you order it on strikegum.com, right? If you're gonna order it anyway, I'll give you the shout out. Just your first name. You know, I'm good. Okay. Yeah, let me see if I can pull up the nuclear power plant in Kursk. Wait, actually. What are your thoughts on sending old F-117s to Ukraine? That's a big no-no. That stealth technology is still something we really, other than the F-35, we have not given that away to anybody else. It remains highly classified and closely guarded by the United States. There is no other, as far as I know, no other country has ever built a stealth aircraft. China maybe claims they prototyped them, but it doesn't seem real. Russia also claimed they prototyped a stealth aircraft, but it didn't really work. there's things that we built, again, in the 70s that we just can't give to anybody else. Also, it's so expensive to maintain stealth aircraft. It is so expensive and so difficult that it probably wouldn't help. What Ukraine would love, would be to have the U.S. stealth aircraft like fleet, like F-35s, fly strike missions for on their behalf. That they would love, and probably they ask probably every 6 months to be like, you sure? You sure you don't want to combat test your F-35s? We'll give you a target list. They'll beat all the Russian radar. We'll pretend we didn't know about it, and that'll be that. Cameron asks, do you think this incursion will change the Russian public's perception of the war? Yes. Yes, I do. That's why Putin's trying to play it down, because he is so worried that the Russian public will see what's happening. And the fact they've had to do these big evacuations of Kursk is really a bad look. The F-117 is out of service for many years, and we let the Serbians keep the wreck after they shot it down because it was outdated. Interesting. But I think we blew that thing to smithereens. I don't think there was much of a wreck left. Ehad Deary says banana blueberry strike gun would be epic. It would be something. I don't know. I tried when we were sampling it. I did a berry one, and the berry one just had a funk. Like it just didn't vibe. The vibes were off. Right? There's something about the caffeine and the berry. It just the vibes were off. All right. What if we gave Ukraine Harriers? Jump jet doesn't really give them an advantage, right? Again, non-stealth aircraft, they just can't get close to the front line. That's the problem. They have a radar signature, they get smoked. Danny Strange, thank you. It's why... yeah, it's one of the reasons... yeah, it's one of the reasons that, like, basically the U.S. has invested so much in stealth aircraft for the past 25 years. Because once the Soviet Union developed their version of the Patriot, like their version of a surface-to-air radar-guided missile system, A-10s, scrap heap, F-16, scrap heap, especially with shoulder-mounted man pads. They're too small, right? A man pads is just too small. You can't take them all out, right? There's a gazillion of them. They're everywhere. And you can't have close air support and man pads on the battlefield, period. So the U.S. massive fleet of stealth aircraft, they don't fly unless absolutely necessary, right? Again, these non-stealth aircraft, they just don't. They're good for a lot of things. They're good at killing terrorists. They're good at killing, like, Somali pirates with AKs. But against a state actor like Russia or China, they're scrap. They're flying scrap. Claudio, thank you. Appreciate you guys. Anything else? Anything else, guys? I'm going to get out of here. All right. I'm hungry. Got to get some dinner. I appreciate you guys coming by. Huge attendance. Love it. We're going to keep you updated. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.